It's November 23rd, 2023. This is Roqe. Welcome to episode 299 of Roqe. I'm Jian Gomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto. Hello to you from Canada. Salam Dostan Aziz. Durud Bashoma. Hope you are doing well wherever you are tuning in from around the world. A special episode today about artificial intelligence, that's AI, and how we should feel about its inevitable growing role in occupying our world. Should we fear AI? Is the name of the episode, and my special guest for the entire episode is the brilliant Iranian-American tech entrepreneur and social media star Kooshiar Azimian, who will be joining me from California. Should we fear AI? We will get to that interview in just a bit. You don't want to miss it. First up, let me say hello to Smart Pega. Hello.
Hello.
You're wearing...
Here we go.
You've got a new perfume or something? Right before we started recording, I'm having an allergy, asthma, panic. I mean, all kinds of attacks.
Really?
Well, I don't know what's happening. What have you doused yourself with?
This is a really old perfume that I used to wear, and today I just felt like
it
I don't know. I felt nostalgic.
I walked into a Sephora, or I don't know, where do people get perfume?
Sure.
Okay.
Why not?
Can you get perfume at a Sephora?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, they sell.
Feels like I've walked into a Sephora.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I'll write to Chanel for you.
Is it Chanel?
It is.
Oh, I'm having an allergic reaction to Chanel. Note to self, don't be near Chanel. Do you fear AI?
I don't fear it. I'm concerned. Like, I think about it.
You think about it?
Yeah, a lot.
And what do you think about if you don't fear it?
Okay, this is the reason I don't fear it. I don't fear it because I think it's inevitable. So I don't think there's a point in fearing something that is going to happen anyway.
A lot of people fear death, and they know it's inevitable.
But the same thing, I feel the same way about death.
You do not fear death?
No.
Oh.
I don't fear death. What I fear is the process of losing a loved one. But I'm not afraid of dying.
Do you fear losing a loved one, or just the process of losing a loved one?
The process, because again, losing your loved ones is inevitable.
What do you're not afraid of AI because you're like a robot.
No,
I have no feelings.
No,
I do not fear.
Lots of feelings.
Well, what do you fear?
Going through that.
Name something that you fear in life.
Losing my loved ones. That's probably my biggest fear.
And that's inevitable as well.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the going through that is the part I fear. The actual death piece is not something I fear.
What about the going through of losing our emancipation to robots? Are you fearing that?
Honestly, I'm more concerned about what the implications of this kind of technology has. So, for example, what it's going to mean for military. What it's going to mean for
Well, that's part of the fear. The fear isn't
like
just the comical, I'm saying the robot army.
Yeah, I don't...
The fear is also job losses, the reorganization of society, the further separation of first world and other world, or I don't know, all of those things.
Yeah,
right?
Those things are definitely a concern. But the whole robot thing that everyone keeps talking about, that I don't...
Centralization of power in one human who has the AI controls, or maybe one robot's hands. What's funny is many years I was at the CBC, and I would joke about, I would say I'm afraid of the robot army, and I would even jokingly end the show like, now I say like Mizun Bashin.
Yeah.
I would be like, be careful of the robot army, they're coming, and now I'm validated.
They really are.
Yeah, because in researching, I'm going to talk to Kooshiar about this, but AI, this is pretty scary stuff. Like just the rate of how AI is advancing, teaching itself.
Yeah, the adaptive technology.
Adaptive technology.
That's actually the scariest.
Whatever your perfume is, AI could take that and teach itself to make it to militarize, to weaponize even further. Because it already is clearly weaponized. Like, I can't even speak.
I'm gonna sit on the other side of the room.
Can we get some fans going in here? I mean, jeez.
Last time you told me you really liked my perfume.
Was it this?
No, that one was. That was another one. That was Creed.
Apparently,
now this one, you're
that was called what?
Creed.
Creed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now this one
I
you're
prefer
having
the perfume to the band. Anyway.
Alright.
I should. So, Do You Fear AI is the episode. Kooshiar, Azimian coming up for a feature interview, and of course we're going to do some roundup after the interview today. I want to note that we've had a lot of response to our Monday roundtable, just in the last 3 days since it came out, where we debated such topics as whether the Islamic Republic's supreme leader and master of hate speech, Ayatollah Khamenei, should be banned from X.
Formerly known as Twitter.
Formerly known as the artist known as Prince, the social media platform. You can continue giving us your thoughts, and I should mention the Monday roundtable. I believe I have to talk to whoever runs this place. Myself in the morning. I think we're going to move the Monday roundtable to Thursdays, in which case we'll have one big show with 2 parts. Roundtable, interview, or interview, roundtable.
Love it.
You do love that.
I do.
Do you?
I do.
I'm not so sure you do.
I think it'll be great.
Well, off the air, you've been arguing, why doesn't the roundtable have its own show? And now all of a sudden, I love it.
Well, because
this is like when some of the
that
guests come on and you're like, oh, that was really good. And
oh
I know you don't mean it.
You're going to get me in trouble.
Yeah. That's the perfume talking. What were you going to say? You think it's good?
Yes, but I lost my train of thought.
One show, 2 big parts.
Yeah, I think it'll be really great. And I think it'll give us an opportunity to really catch up on what's been happening over the course of the week because, as we know, there's so much to cover.
Can I give you some of the reasoning why we're going down to one show?
Please.
Some of it is functional, economic. You can't, it's hard keeping things afloat. And we really appreciate any support that we get from our audience by going to roqemedia.com and pressing support us. See, I know just saying that won't do it. They need to.
Unfortunately.
I don't know what does it with the Persian community, but we'd hope that there be support. Anyway, but that's not entirely the reason. The reason is we've been consistently getting feedback from the audience that says you guys can't keep up with how much content we put out. I think it's partly because we don't just put out 2 shows, but they tend to be longer than an hour, and sometimes 2 hours or 2.5 hours or so. So this is in the hopes that if we do 1 show a week, people can kind of catch up, and they have the week to listen to that show, even if it's a long show.
Yes.
Hopefully, right?
I had one of my friends tell me that recently.
Tell you that just they can't keep up the content.
She's 2 episodes behind.
Right.
And I was like, oh, 2. All right.
Right. I hope you canceled that friend.
I told her to listen faster.
Yeah. So no, don't tell him that. You mean to listen on the fast thing?
No, to listen
Okay, not to speed up the thing.
God,
right.
no.
You know people do that, right? On their podcast platforms.
I do that on my WhatsApp voice notes.
It's terrible. That's terrible. I mean, all these dramatic pauses that I put in the middle of interviews.
And they're missed.
Lost by those listening at 3 times the speed. Next week on the show, in this moment, on the next Thursday's show, Kaveh Madani joining me. So if today's episode is about AI, next week is about climate change and the environment. And he's coming in on the day of a big conference, a massive climate conference beginning in Dubai. I don't think Kaveh's going because of security reasons, partly, but he's one of the leading voices on the environments in the world. He's been on our show before. Hasn't been on the show since the uprising, and I'm curious to ask him how the uprising in Iran affected the plight of the environment in Iran, which has been in a disastrous state. I can only imagine it's gotten much worse. And all of what's going on in the world right now, what are the implications for further environmental degradation when wars in the Middle East and Ukraine, and because part of the idea of these climate conferences is the world working together. If the world is in a war with each other, they're not going to be working together to help save the birds.
The planet,
right?
yeah, of course.
So Kaveh Madani next week, along with the roundtable. The great composer, performer, arranger, producer, Schubert.
Oh, wow.
Schubert Avakian will be joining me for a feature interview in a couple weeks. I think it's in a couple weeks. he has produced and arranged everyone from Ebby to Gugush, famously with Black Cats, and he's a young guy still.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Schubert will be joining me. Mehrangiza Kaur returns to the show. The incredible, strong voice of Mehrangiza Kaur, the lawyer, the activist. I have so much to ask her about what she's been such a key person through the history of Iran over the last 50 years, a powerful feminist woman. What she sees has occurred over the last 15 months, whether she's obviously been energized by the Women Life Freedom movement, where she sees it now, how she's processing everything that's going on.
You know, now I'm a little intimidated about having the roundtable with these interviews.
You see?
As you're going through these names, I'm thinking,
You know what? You know what will help?
What will help?
Perfume. Lots of perfume. just douse it on yourself and knock off the other contestants with your. So so Pegah, we'll be back. We're gonna have a little roundup and talk about Angelina Jolie, talking to Nagis Mohammadi. Then a new position from the Islamic Republic on the freedom of Palestinians. We'll get to all of that in the roundup coming up after the interview. We'll see you in a little bit.
Yes.
We are coming to you on roqemedia.com. It's there that you can link to all of our platforms: Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple, Instagram, Castbox. If you like to see visuals with Roqe, switch over to YouTube. And our descriptions and bulletins in English and Persian can be found on Telegram. Subscribe on any or all of those platforms. We love it when you share our stuff. And if you can support us, you can do so through the Patreon page, which you find from our website, roqemedia.com. Press the support us button. It's not a big ask. It's a few bucks a month, and it really keeps us alive. We really appreciate it. All right, let's get to the featured topic of this episode and my featured guest. Should we fear AI? You know, artificial intelligence is on everyone's lips these days, and certainly this week with a bizarre and melodramatic ousting of Sam Altman as the CEO of OpenAI. That's the developer behind language models like ChatGPT, as well as advanced image generation models like DALL-E 3. Then the reinstatement of Sam Altman as the CEO of OpenAI. There's been a lot of AI talk in the news, but if we zoom out, there's no consensus on whether artificial intelligence itself is a good or bad development for the future of humanity. In short, AI may be considered the best or the scariest, depending on who you ask. It's a bold, unclear new frontier, and so today we ask, should we fear AI? Is AI the most exciting new development in technology that will advance the world, or is it the beginning of some kind of technological apocalypse, or is it both? My guest today is an Iranian-American tech entrepreneur and social media star. Kooshiar Azimian is the founder and CEO of 310 AI, a machine learning for a biotech company. Kooshiar was born and raised in Mashhad. He moved to the U.S. to pursue his studies, got his master's in computer science from Rutgers University. He was the founder of Concert Boom, a ticket aggregator that evolved into the fifth largest ticketing website globally. Following that success, he worked as the staff engineer and tech lead for the Facebook ads ranking team, the largest machine learning organization within Facebook. Kooshiar became a globally followed voice and face for Iranians during the uprising for freedom and democracy last year, as he made videos explaining how to deal with and circumvent tech issues in the aid of the quest for freedom in Iran. And right now, Kooshiar Azimian joins me from San Francisco today. Hello, sir.
Hello, how are you? That was a very flattering introduction. I should ask you to introduce me.
I'm happy to come on tour and do the introductions. It's great to see you again and have you back on the show. Just as we left you, you're in front of the chalkboard with all. Does that data behind you change, or is that just like a set now?
It's something between static. Let's say every piece might change weekly. I think it's just a good background also.
It's a great
So yeah.
background. It serves the dual function of making you look very official and tech savvy, and also for the viewer like me, I have no idea what any of it means. It just looks like
No,
gobbledygook.
it's these are very actually easy stuff. This is just a very general pipeline of what a machine learning training pipeline looks like. These are just the steps.
Are you ready for a conversation about AI?
For sure.
You
Let's
know,
do it.
I I feel like this is a long time coming for me because I've long had this sort of running joke for years on the air on TV. I would make this joke about how the robot army, the robots are coming to get us, the robots are going to take over. And for me, it was sort of a joke. It was sort of presenting myself as some kind of a layman who doesn't understand technology. But in the meantime, I was using my gadgets and didn't really believe what I was saying. Now I'm actually beginning to get concerned about the robot army taking over. You do recognize the fervor around AI, that some people are super excited about it, others are terrified, they see an existential risk. I imagine in your world, Kooshiar, you're probably surrounded more by the excitement than the pessimism because that is your business. Would that be true?
I'm in both camps. Very, very. Yeah, I can see both arguments, and I actually believe in both arguments that this is going to be the most effective, the most capable tools humanity have ever created, and it's going to tackle a lot of really, really big problems in pharma, in biotech, in curing cancer, in solving a lot of humanity problems. But at the same time, it is, to me, it's very likely to become an existential crisis. Have you actually heard the great filter theory? I don't know, great filter theory or paradox, or yeah,
I
have you
think
heard of
so,
it?
but go ahead and explain it. Yeah.
So this basically great filter says that there we live in a very, very massive universe with, and it's very likely, if you just follow the basic logics of chemistry and biology, it's very likely that we should have other intelligent species or agents in this universe, right? And it's very likely that we're curious to reach them out, they're curious to reach us. Why we never met them? Why we never came across
Hmm.
such entities? You want to call it aliens or whatever agents
Right.
they might be. Why we never see them? And there are a lot of theories around that. And one of the theories that I found it more acceptable is there is a limit to intelligence, meaning that basically as you become more intelligent, let's say from a fish to, I don't know, to frog, to cow, to monkey, to human, to whatever, you become more capable, obviously, right?
Sure.
You become capable of building tools, and those tools become more capable. You build, I don't know, it's fire, and then you build cars, and you build airplanes, and you build AI. And as these tools become more capable, you are capable of more construction work, but also more destruction,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
You have a basically button that you can push and destroy a bigger and bigger and bigger portion of existence around you,
Right. Right.
humanity, planet, whatever, right? For example, nuclear bombs was just one example of that, that we
Sure.
somehow took control of them, which is, that theory says that this intelligence at some point is going to be so capable that the destruction power is going to be massive enough that it, in one button can just wipe out
Correct.
everything.
Yeah.
And basically, a lot of people say we are very close to that point, actually.
I mean, isn't the point that all of those technological inventions through history, if we go back to the wheel and then the industrial revolution and then the coming of automation and then computers, etc., none of them have established consciousness. In other words, you can invent the nuclear weapon, but the nuclear weapon can't decide itself that it's going to drop itself on China. But that's the precipice at what we're at with AI. Is that the difference?
That's also, that's one part of it. That's one big part of it. You want to call it consciousness, or you want to call it control, or you want to call it intelligence. There's something about AI that is very different. The nuclear bomb would never just make a decision to start itself.
Right. It needs the human. The human has to do something with the nuclear bomb. But
We were always in control, and there's this thing that I always say, like, if you put multiple agents in a room, and by room I mean an environment. It could be a jungle, it could be a country, it could be a city, it could be just an actual room. If you put multiple agents, let's say some animals, some humans, some robots, some software in one room, and they have their own agenda, they have their own logic, they have their own intelligence, their central bodies of whoever they are, and they have their own identity. After a while, when things get more complex, the agent who is more intelligent is going to take control of or the entire room. At this point, humans are that agent on the planet, right?
right.
There is no reason why AI cannot, whatever this term AI means, right? It means a lot of different things to different. Some people think of it as a robot, some people think of it as some software in the internet, some people think of it as Chat GPT. Whatever form it has, there's no reason why it cannot take control.
There's no reason it can take control. I mean, that's quite an extraordinary statement, and that's I don't mean to cut you off, but as I've been prepping for this, as I've been trying to do some basic research, there does seem to be a couple of different camps. There are people who are running around with the hair on fire, and I'm sympathetic to some of them, and then there are people in your world, in the tech world, who are writing very long and profound articles or that say, hey, calm down, everything's fine, everybody worries about every new technological development. Earlier this year, the Center for AI Safety suggested that artificial intelligence could lead to the extinction of humanity. Now, the thing that surprised me about this was that who is the Center for AI Safety? This is a statement supported by the chief executive of ChatGPT, like OpenAI, the chief executive of Google DeepMind, the chief executive of Anthropic. So these are the tech leaders. These are the people, the leaders in your field, like yourself, who are the very ones who are saying extinction of humanity. That's the shit that scares me.
It is a very complicated. It has a lot of aspects into it. So this is a highly political issue. It's a power issue. Basically, whoever takes control of this is going to be the most powerful entity of the future. If it's a country, or if it's a company, or if it's a person, basically everybody agrees at this point on that. And so because of that, there are a lot of politics around it, and there's a lot of power play around it. But there's also a lot of reality. So who says what for what reason could be a lot of complications behind it. For example, Elon Musk was trying to get this thing in some sort of a ban or ceasefire for a while, and a lot of people are saying because he was just behind, he wanted to get his own company into the race, and he did with the X
Right.
AI now. But I do believe that he's actually worried deeply, and I totally can see that line. But yeah, there are two camps. There's Jan LeCun, who's a very senior AI scientist who has been around this field for long, and he's a very respected person, and says these are all BS. We are not moving toward that direction. But there are all these Sam Altman, Elon Musk type of people who have been around this. And to me, I think being worried is a reasonable stance at this point. It's definitely, yeah, and the risks are not just extinction. Extinction is just one very final, one worst case scenario. There are other. So if I want to break down the risk, I break it down to 4 tiers. The tier 1 risk that are, I call it, they're not extension, right? And those are the ones that usually politicians talk about. For example, AI cheating in elections,
Right.
or AI deepfake, right?
Right.
deepfake is something that a lot of people are worried about, or discrimination, or racism, or all these things that politicians mostly talk about,
Right.
the fear of AI. Those are what is very, very likely to happen in near future. Deepfake is something that we can see every day now. They're becoming almost indistinguishable. And still, like if you look at the picture, sometimes they have six fingers, like there's still
Right.
errors, but
Deepfake. Can
they're
you
getting.
just explain this? This is I'm presuming you're talking about videos, photos, images that are not real, that are being AI generated, artificial intelligence generated, that could obviously lead to tremendous misinformation and misrepresentation, etc.
Yeah, and there's sometimes there augmentation of some reality. For example, you put somebody's voice on somebody else's head, or you change an audio of whatever some political candidate said, or it could be a totally new thing that you just build by yourself. You create your own celebrity, you create your own movie, and we're a bit far from generating a whole movie. That probably is going to take another few years, but augmenting or altering movies or speeches is already done. You can see it on it's all over Instagram. That's the tier one that is basically happening now.
Would you call that ethical considerations?
There are a lot, yeah, a lot of that falls into ethics.
Okay.
And then tier two is, which is, to me, this is another obvious outcome. And there are a lot of dangers around it. I don't know, but it's not an existential crisis. It's everything about economical and political disruption that is coming. Every time humanity goes over some big uh, industrial or economical shift, there's going to be a lot of disruption, and there's going to be a lot of misplacement or displacement. And we're definitely we experience that with the with internet and then with software. We saw this happening multiple times in the last few decades, and I suspect a lot of all this anger and social unrest is the outcome of that, partially at least.
Sorry, are you talking about jobs now?
Mostly about jobs.
So this is the concern, that the potential that for AI to replace human jobs, and which does seem like an obvious one, although it has to be counterbalanced with how AI can also play a role in job creation, right?
That's the line that all these tech companies selling people at this point, and I do not believe that. I do believe that every time in. So one argument is everything that you say about AI and all the fears about AI have been said about any other technology in the past. And you were wrong. All these technologies end up in helping humanity, advancing more opportunity, more work, bigger economy, more jobs, more equality, perhaps. And you're always wrong. But as you briefed about this, there is something fundamentally different about this technology, and the level of skill, the level of decision making, the level of control is, and the whole history of humanity is very short. So it's very, I think people just extrapolate too much based on very little data. Our entire history is very, very, very short. If you think like the number of these big technological advances, very, very small number. So the jobs and the loss of jobs never will be in the shape of, oh, you one day you wake up and there is no doctor job. It's never in that form. It's always going to be marginal, right? I don't know if you have experience with ChatGPT. I ask my health questions from ChatGPT these days a lot. I ask a lot of questions about everything that I needed to talk to an expert. I ask from ChatGPT a lot, and this is a very, very, very baby version of what it's going
Well,
to
I
be.
was going to say, I mean, just to anecdotally, in having worked in media for the last 25 years, for example, to at a professional level, to write a script, let's say for a professional broadcast, you would traditionally need a researcher. You would need somebody who gathers the information. You would need then a writer to write the script. You would need an editor, potentially. Even another person who edits the script. All of that, not to mention a lot more that can go into developing and putting together scripts for broadcast. All of that can be now done in a few minutes or a few seconds by ChatGPT. And we're told that ChatGPT is in its embryonic stages, and that each month it gets more and more. So that, at least in my field, in this field, that would obviously displace jobs. It would obviously, yes, somebody needs to tell ChatGPT what the topic is, but But I mean, beyond that, I don't see the job creation element to this.
Yeah, there are obviously going to be some job creation, but is that what is the volume of that compared to the volume of the jobs that are going to be lost? And this argument that Elon Musk brought, I've been trying to say this, and I'm kind of like shy because people get upset about it when you tell them this. If the AI is smarter than you and does everything better than you, what position are you needed? Right? I mean, people say, "Oh, it creates more jobs," but what are those jobs exactly that the AI cannot do? Just tell me, because at this point, in any kind, it's very funny, in any kind of strategic game, that these are basically the benchmark for human intelligence. AI can beat humans. It was a chess in 2000 that was, you can't call it AI because it's mostly a decision tree. And then there's do you know the game of Go? This game was supposed to be a very intuitive game, not a mathematical game per se. They call it something intersection of science and math, and also art and strategy. And the popular belief was this game was never going to be owned by computers, because it is intuition, and you need to be a human to understand the strategy. 2016, the team of DeepMind at Google build the first algorithm that beats the world champion. Nobody thought this is ever going to happen. 2017, I'm hoping I'm right about the numbers. 2017, the second version of that algorithm beats the first version 400 to 0. And the second version had no exposure to human games. It just learned by playing by itself. That shows how fast this technology is growing. Right. And at what point, like, where are we going to be needed?
Right. Just to play along for a second, though, when you said, "Can anyone make a suggestion of something that AI can't eventually do better?" I might suggest creativity, because creativity is not only not a math equation, but it's intrinsically imperfect. So if I give you the example of Bob Dylan, I don't know if some Iranians listening might not know Bob Dylan, but the famous singer-songwriter, who emerges in the 1960s, his songs are not necessarily linear. Like they don't follow the way a traditional pop song would necessarily. So they're coming from some sort of creative alternative kind of universe that he's generating. His voice is definitely not a perfect voice. It's a very particular, weird, nasal kind of affected voice so it's hard for me to believe that a computer could become a Bob Dylan. I can understand a computer writing a perfect quote unquote pop song, but not being Bob Dylan. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on this, but it just came to mind when you said we can't, and that's where so far AI hasn't satisfied me, that it can generate soul, that it has a creative impulse. Notwithstanding what you just said about the intuitive game it won, that's the part where it falls apart for me.
Have you played with the new basically painting bots, the Dolly and Midjourney, the ones that create paintings for you?
I have not.
Yeah, they're getting there, and this imperfection can be programmed the same way that the perfection can be programmed, and it could be customized for different tastes. And basically what you are saying is that that imperfection is, I don't want to sound too harsh, but it kind of sounds like a the analogy for that that comes to mind is zoo. Like we go to zoo to see animals because they're imperfect, because they're like a lesser intelligent version of ourselves. And basically that argument tends to, okay, wherever we're not good at, we're just gonna, some people are gonna pay to watch us. Some all
No,
the things
I
needs to be
disagree. No,
good.
it's our imperfections that we love sometimes. It's the fact that the person you're in love with has one crooked tooth, or has a way of saying something differently, that's what we love, isn't it?
Yes, but two things. First, AI can probably reproduce those two. And then the second is you don't pay your doctor to be imperfect, right? To make some like random mistake, or
True.
you don't pay
True.
your uh, flight crew to be imperfect. Like it's,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and yeah, there's that job disruption part. And then there's obviously the surveillance and big this sort of Orwellian 1984 uh, type of central government. That's also another worry. And it's very funny that most people who are in AI and running this show at this moment are very anti-big government, the Sam Altmans and Elon Musk of the world. But there is this big fear.
Is that number 3 or 4? Because I stopped you at
This
number
is
2.
part of the number two, basically, the
Okay.
economical and political
Well,
disruption. But
can I
maybe
can, can
maybe
I
that's
ask you about that? I mean, there is a concern that the power of AI becomes increasingly concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. So
for sure.
it's enabling regimes to enforce narrow values through that surveillance you were talking about, or oppressive censorship, because it's in the hands of a few. That also seems like a legitimate concern to me. We've seen that with Elon Musk even, and Twitter, the power of one man deciding, what's going to be allowed and not allowed on a platform that many people think is where they're getting their news.
Yeah, the centralization is definitely one outcome of AI, one big outcome of AI. And if it falls into the wrong hand, the good thing is usually like these are the people who are the smartest people usually working on these things, and they're not very into authoritarians, but things could change. Like, and yeah, it could fall into the wrong. I Yeah, I think in short term, politician type people are going to lose their positions because of this, but you don't know who's going to take over and not. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure that everybody would agree that Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and others are the most ethical people in the world in terms of the way they've played it all out. I mean, you've worked for
yeah,
Zuckerberg,
that's
so
very controversial. Yeah, I worked at Facebook. I've never actually met Zuckerberg. I did work. I'm pretty familiar with the culture and how that company is being. Yeah, there are multiple camps about this, and
sure.
yeah, and again, Zuckerberg and Elon Musk are very different people.
Yes.
And then the third one is I call it things that could not existential threat, but things that could get out of hands in a scale. Let's say you have self-driving cars. Have you seen the self-driving cars that there is no safety driver? Have you
Yes.
seen
I
it in
mean, I've
real?
seen videos of it. I haven't seen it in
They're
person.
all over San Francisco. It's, they're
Really?
in San Francisco. Yeah, they're pretty. I think they banned one of the companies, but you can still see many of them, and they're in multiple other cities. There are a couple of cities in Texas, in Arizona. They're in multiple cities now, and there's no driver, and the car just. It's very funny actually when you see it on this. It's first like it take you a while to get used to it, and just assume that in I don't know 5, 10 years some big percentage of the cars on the streets are going to be self-driving. There is going to be no driver, no safety driver, nobody. The car drive by itself. What if these cars get hacked? I mean, the hacking is just one, and then start just attacking people, right? Or what if the cars at some point starts optimizing for wrong objective function. This is very likely with AI. For example, they want to get to a point very fast, and they start colluding with each other against other cars, right?
Hmm.
They block some part of the road.
Right.
These are not super villain Hollywood movie scenarios. These are very likely things to happen.
I,
And what if you were seeing security robots on this? What if they start attacking people just to maximize up, just to clean up their street, but attacking some?
well, I mean, a simple way to say it is, what if they malfunction? Right?
Yeah,
That's a. But it also occurs to me that that is also an old argument that people have made. It's like saying, with the invention of the elevator, well, what if the elevator malfunctions and drops to the ground and everybody dies? We know that those things can happen. But again, it comes down to, in this
to
case,
scale.
what's that?
And to a scale. And
Scale,
have you
right? Yeah,
seen the Social Dilemma documentary on
yes,
Netflix? That basically, I really like that documentary. It highlights the right. It's the AI doesn't need to, and that was a few years ago. That was before all these new advances. AI doesn't need to be smarter than us to ruin us or ruin us partially all the time in every aspect. It needs to be smarter than us sometimes in some aspects. That example of social media is a big one. So basically, the Social Dilemma documentary was about that. Okay, you're a human being. You have emotions. You have, how do I say it? You have holes in your brains, right? Everybody. You have weaknesses. And if you're interacting with the agent that is somewhat smart all the time and somewhat sometimes wants to trick you, it can. And that's why how many of your how many of people who are watching this program are addicted to Instagram and cannot get over that, right?
right.
That's one example of like, that's why I say this is very different from the elevator. In elevator, we don't see people getting addicted to elevator. We don't see people abusing the elevator. Elevator doesn't have a feedback loop that talks to people, talks
Right,
back to people.
right, right. It occurs to me that as you're saying all of this, I'm thinking there must be some work that has been done on some kind of international group that is going to oversee this. I mean, do you believe? Because again, as well, I mean, if you and I first came together in terms of our conversations around talking about the Islamic Republic regime, which we may agree acts in an unethical way, AI in the hands of the mullahs in Iran is going to be necessarily different than AI in the hands of a Western so-called liberal democracy. Should, in your view, there be global standards or regulations to govern the development and deployment of AI technologies? And is any of that happening?
There's some happening. It's just this thing is too political, too much power to be exchanged, and I, I think the public usually overestimate how much of power and how much of control and how much of vision politicians have. I usually like there is this thing that the public saying that there's a group of people sitting in one room and they know everything and they have control and they have the vision and those are the politicians and the presidents of the world. And like, I just don't think that's I disagree with such a view.
Right.
Forget about the AI, right? And then when you get to, for example, when you watch Senate hearing about social media, about technology, about software, you see how far behind these
Yeah.
people, at
Yeah.
least some of them are,
Yeah.
right? These are people in their 70s and 80s, and some of them, they don't even have computer, they don't know how the internet works. And the fact is, you could have said this maybe 100 years ago also, that these are maybe not in touch with the newest technology, but the technology did not change in this rapid pace 100 years ago. So when you're 10 years behind in 2023, it's very different than when you're 10 years behind in
Yeah.
1900
Yeah.
or 1800. So a kid in San Francisco who has a laptop and just code some Python and has access to some APIs and know how to write PyTorch could become a, this is one of my thesis, could that person becomes a more powerful person than a senator in next 10 years? That's where the world is going. That's how, and it has been happening in last even 20, 30 years. How many people with just like a ripped off shorts and like a $10 t-shirts have you seen that are running these massive companies
Right.
with?
So how do you regulate that? Or should I mean, how do you create? Can you create global standards around that?
Well, the first question is that global entity is a positive thing or not? Is that going to help, or it's going to be more that is going to become the thing that we are afraid of, that Orwellian society? That's one thing.
Right.
The second part is that consortium, whatever you want to call it, is that going to be effective? So I'm trying to be devil's advocate. I think we probably need to do that, and it is happening. The third part is, are these going to be politicians, or actually they're going to bring experts? And what we see now, they're bringing experts. They're bringing Sam Altmans and Elon Musk and Sundar. I don't know if he's an expert in this. And but there's, once you agree, that's also taken care of. They're bringing the experts. Are these experts, they basically talking their own backs, right? Which is basically, they're at this point, there's 6 7 big tech companies that they're controlling this thing mostly, and they have huge economic incentive to just put a wall around it. That's also another
Yeah.
worry.
What was your number 4?
The number 4 is what we talked at the beginning, the existential
Ah, okay.
crisis, basically losing control.
Kooshiar, I've heard, I mean, when we talk about what I call consciousness, you were saying, using the word intelligence, one of the fears or one of the realities with AI is that you have a scenario where AI its learning curve is exponential. So AI, if you program AI to teach itself, we can't even predict where it's going to be 3 months from now because it's exponentially growing in its intelligence. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, just look at where things, basically the first very, I would say, in not even industrial, the first versions of AI that could basically show any significance of doing anything that human can do, you can point to 2013. 2013 was the year that the ImageNet, there were a couple of successful algorithms that basically, there were AI algorithms that could tell apart pictures of cats and dogs and donkeys and monkeys, right? That they could just tell apart pictures from each other, right? That was the technology in 2013. Where are we now in 10
Wow.
years?
Wow.
That's, we have self-driving, we have chat gpt, we have dolly, and the field that I'm working, drug design, this is like insane that how fast this whole industry is becoming AI. The growth is definitely very fast, and it's coming from multiple sources. It's, we're getting more data every day, we're getting better at collecting data. The data part is growing, the compute part growing, the processor part is growing with the whole GPU revolution. Now is probably arguably the most important company in the AI age is NVIDIA, which is the producer of these GPUs and compute engines. The compute is growing, the data is growing, the algorithms are getting better, the finance gets better, the more money comes into this. The most successful company, OpenAI, in this field had very hard time raising money at the beginning. They started as a non-profit company, and they had a really hard time financing this whole thing. Now we're seeing the numbers as it's going to AI. Basically, everybody believed that this is the next big thing.
Do you? I mean, you're not just an analyst. You know, you're not sitting on the sidelines, kind of looking at this and deconstructing it for people like a journalist or something. You're in it. So I mean, one might actually say you have a vested interest. You are another version of Elon Musk, where you're profiting from your business is AI. So I'm curious how much you and your team, you know, if the theme of this conversation is how scared should we be, you know, and who's creating the barriers, who's looking out for us as this stuff is being created, how much time do you guys spend in real terms, you know, discussing that, worrying about that, programming for that, which I might suspect is not even cost effective. In other words, it probably costs too much to worry too much about some of these concerns. So a lot of companies probably don't. Tell me about, in your daily life, how much you think about this ethical stuff.
Yeah, if I want to get into, it's a very funny actually situation. Basically, the smartest people in the field and the most ambitious are just basically not doing what you're saying. They're busy building the products. They're building, running in this race. Who can build these things faster? And there's a very basically sideline talk about this. Oh, is this going to kill all of us? And nobody wants to spend time on that because again, the smartest, the most ambitious people of the community, they're working on how to build these things faster. For our company, is for our startup, we're in the field of molecule design, and these molecules, we design large functional molecules, and they're going to be a cancer drug, they're going to be tackling climate tech challenges. They're molecules, so we're not in that necessarily dangerous part that we should. Yeah, we don't spend much time because we're not building fundamental AI tools. And I just don't know how serious those ethic themes are at this point. I've seen a lot of them, they're growing very fast, but I just think most of these companies, that's the way for them to shut down the regulators. They say, oh, look, we talk about this. We have a team, we have 100 people talking in the other room about ethics of AI. But are those 100 team are those the decision makers of the company, and are those the best of your talents, or are those the most ambitious people, or is that just some room that you create to give the illusion that there is? And yeah, we don't have those discussions in our startup. At least it's not a big portion of our time.
You know, if one of the concerns that you touched on earlier, when you talked about the zoo analogy, you know, where I mean, it is enfeeblement, right? Like where humans just become dependent on AI. Like it's like a scenario from the film Wall-E. You know, we're just kind of all that the humans are on the sidelines, and we're living through that dependency. Something that preoccupies me is how. I mean, this might be true for you and I, but I also think about for next generations, like somebody who's a little kid right now. You know, if I use the analogy of, you mentioned Instagram earlier, you know, we all know now the sort of notion that oh, I saw somebody's photo, or maybe it was on a dating app or something. In reality, they look nothing like that, right? That to me becomes a metaphor for everything now. We don't know what the real news is. We don't know what the truth is of what's happening in the world. We don't know what people look like. We don't know what they're capable of. We don't know who they are. That truth becomes one of the casualties. The reality becomes a casualty of a world that's dominated by an unethical sort of technological infrastructure. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, and with the risk of becoming too philosophical, the truth has a lot to do with having one single physics, right? This is the first time I'm saying this sentence. I hope it makes sense. So basically, if this pen is here, is next to my head, there's just one physics, right? This distance is just one number, right? But if there are multiple versions of physics, there are all these like filters, and there are this AR and VR, these alternate realities. The truth is not as important anymore in that fashion of one thing. There are just many truths, right? It's a more of a fuzzy concept. Maybe the country in your the version of world that you live in some alternate realities, Biden is not president. Somebody, Donald Trump won the election. You live in that world, right? And that's where all the news are. And the AI can produce that word for you all the time, and you're happy with that. That's one extreme version of it. And the whole social media, the whole digitization help with that. We are going to have another revolution next to the AI, which is AR, VR, basically alternate realities. All these goggles become better and better. AI is going to fuel that too. And some people are going to check out of this world. At least big portion of their life. As you said, with the filters, right? You go to Instagram, nobody looks like
But
themselves.
how does society function? I mean, it seems like a prescription for dysfunction. I mean, and already we're seeing the divisions, whether it's in America or anywhere in the world, based on exactly what you said, the nascent ideas of, well, no, this isn't my president, this is my president, here's the evidence, etc. Take that to multiply that times 100, and how are we functioning with each other?
One of these leaves of this great filter theory is we are either going to extinct or we're going to turn into something that is not anything close to who we are today, right? We're going to transform to another species. And one thing about what you said with social media is there's this thing that if in a world that everything is physical, you have to make peace with people, right? Let's say you have 5 neighbors and you don't like any of them. You can't function in that
Right,
neighborhood, right?
right.
Your own existence would be in danger. You have to start making peace with like at least 3 or 4 of them, and then the last guy that you really, really, really don't like, you still have to be. You don't need to be friends with him, but you have to just make some sort of peace, right?
Necessarily coexist. Yes, yes,
You have to coexist
yes.
just by the laws of physics if you want to be safe. But in this digital world, that necessity is gone.
Huh.
You don't like 5 people that you're in the room, you leave the room, you go to some other room, some digital room in somewhere else in the universe. You don't like them, you close the button. This idea that we can just block people, like assume that in real life there's a neighbor that you can just block, like there's a cross and you just click and then you don't see this person anymore. We don't have that in physical world. And it made it too easy for us to become more radical,
Yeah.
right? In that scenario that you had 5 neighbors, you had to just move to the average over time. Like you had to become more moderate a little bit. You had to see their side of the story. But now it's very easy to, I don't like your side of the story, I block you.
Right, but
And now,
but the flip side is true too, which is that 20 years ago, or let alone 50 years ago or 100 years ago, I would have no ability to troll Cristiano Ronaldo, but I do today.
yeah,
I have access to him, so he needs to block
yeah.
me because I'm if I'm not his fan, right?
Yeah, and we basically, the social media and digital world took out a lot of hierarchy in the society. And those hierarchies, you can argue, in general, I like getting rid of hierarchies, but there are also some functions that they did, and we didn't build any replacement for them. What you're saying is like, let's say, forget about Christian. Let's say somebody that is less controversial, some like Nobel Prize physicist who
Sure.
just discovered something really big, and every like he's done just contribution to the world, nothing controversial about him, nothing. He says a statement that a kid in his mom basement doesn't like, right? You can just yell at this guy and you can just curse at him, right? And people do. And people sometimes do it for fun. In the old world, you had to work your way up to get to that person,
Yeah.
right? There were like layers and layers and layers to
Yeah.
even get physically in
Access.
front of
Yeah.
the person.
Yeah.
And in order to get that access, you had to, the first thing, you had to behave, right? Whatever behave means, right? You had to just have some, yeah, you had to learn physics, you had to learn how to talk to people, you had to network, and you have to go.
Yeah.
Again, I think this overall thing is probably a positive thing, this whole access, but it has its own.
But there's another element to the downside or the fears of around AI that we haven't touched on, and maybe because it's less grandiose and it's less apocalyptic, but it is about how this affects human relationships. Just as technology and social media has led to, uh, if you believe scientists and the medical research, epidemic levels of loneliness or depression or anxiety in kids because they don't have, they're not hanging out with people anymore. They're hanging out with their screens. The AI, interface. I mean, if AI is providing everything that somebody needs sexually, so they don't have to have sex with physical partners anymore because they've got their, AI porn or whatever it is. How does that affect human interaction? I mean, what does that make us in terms of the way we deal with each other?
Yeah, and I go back to the last point. In that old physical world, we had to make compromises, and we had to learn how to make compromises. And that's the ability that I think we're losing it every day. That's why we're becoming angrier in political debates, because in the old world there was just constraints of physics made us want to make peace with each other
You
more
couldn't
often.
only find your echo chamber. You couldn't
Yeah,
only find your affirmation. You had to deal
you
with
couldn't
other.
block people. You
Yeah.
couldn't just get rid of people around you. You couldn't move like 10,000 miles away to find one person who agrees with you. You had to find some sort of a compromise, and with your love life, or your with friends, or with your family. Now it's just too easy, and people like easy. If you have an AI agent that talks with you and only compliments you, and you get used to that. Why do you want to? Yeah, we're very, we haven't. That's the core. That's the core. I think one thing. The conclusion is we are not, our biological evolution and all the tools that we have gained in tens of millions of years have not equipped us to deal with this.
Mm,
That's where I started with the
yeah.
whole great filter economy. This is a very, very uncharted territory for us.
And
And
before, sorry, go ahead. Finish that thought.
yeah, yeah, and it would be very hard. I'm a very optimistic person in general, but I just think we're not equipped to navigate. I know this is a negative statement for an optimistic person, but yeah, I'll be very interested in what is that
But that's
navigation.
exactly as I before I let you go. I mean, a couple of personal questions I wanted to ask you. That was a perfect segue because I was going to ask you if you are frustrated by the lack of knowledge around AI. If you believe that education should play a role in preparing individuals for a future where AI is becoming more prevalent.
Yeah, I think we need to definitely think at least very deep about this. I think we are going to a more two-tier society. That's what happened with the rise of internet. We basically had all these internet jobs, all these engineering software jobs that were very, very, very high paid, and it took a margin, it took some portion of money from all other jobs, and we're going through another one. And both sides should think deeper about this. I don't, the education, that's very, yeah, at least we need to sit down and think about it. I don't know how to educate people about this, but
Well, I mean, I would like to think this conversation is helpful because you're
Yeah.
sharing a lot of insights that that we can chew on. I really appreciate. I always like talking to you, man, and I really appreciate the time you've given
Thank
us
you.
today. Let's end on something positive, because I've focused, I've cornered you with all the negativity for the last hour. If you were to, just out of curiosity, because you spend so much time um, seeing the wondrous things that are happening, the new developments, the new inventions in AI. What is something that you've experienced or seen in the last few weeks that really excites you in terms of AI in the future?
What we're working on. So basically, what our startup is doing, we are designing. You can think of it as a parallel biology. So the biology in hundreds of millions of years came up with all these engineerings of DNAs and RNAs and proteins, and then the entire human body, and it has function, it has maintenance, it has signaling, and it has all the tools to keep us healthy for a period of time, and then it gets rid of us. And there's all sort of diseases around us. We can improve this by AI. We can go back to the biology mechanism and analyze them, and we can start designing new agents, namely in our case, our protein, large molecules that go inside your body and improve some portions of it. That improvement and that maintenance job would be a cancer drug,
Wow.
or it could be a vaccine that is far more effective than everything that we have, or it could be aging drugs. That's something that has been getting a lot of attention recently. People are very seriously working on this. Why do we have to live only 100 years? Can we live 150? Can we live 200? If we go back and re-engineer some of the parts on a molecular level, that's the level we're focused on.
You're going to create this amazing new super race of humans, but they won't have jobs because the jobs will have been taken by AI.
Yeah, that's we're focused on keeping them healthy. Yeah, that should be somebody else's job. That's always the attitude of a startup.
Kooshiar John, thank you so much, man. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. This was great. And we're going to be in actually Toronto. We are going to have an event 28th. If you're free, we'll love to
Of
have
November?
you. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, it's in 13. Oh, 13. Oh, it's actually November 24th.
What's the event?
It's just a community of engineers, entrepreneurs getting together. It's in downtown Toronto. I'll send you the. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, let me know about it. And really, thank you for this. I mean, it's been a really energizing.
It's a very hard discussion. I hope just there's a lot of. I'm a positive person, but we have to talk also about the risks.
Absolutely. Merci. Khudafis.
Merci, Sasha. Thank you.
Bye bye. This is Roqe episode 299. Should we fear AI? Pega is back in the studio here. Hello.
Hello.
It was great talking to Kooshiar. I should also say, if you're in the Toronto area, if you're in the greater Toronto area, there is that Innovate Toronto networking event that he mentioned that will be happening tomorrow, assuming you're listening to this on Thursday. If not today, if you're listening to this on Friday, if not yesterday or 3 days ago, depending on when you're listening to this, Friday, November 24th, from 5 to 9 p.m. at 111 325 Front Street West is where it's happening. Innovate Toronto, if you want to see Kooshiar in person. Those conversations, man, it blows my mind, some of what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. And his, count him, I guess, as amongst these folks like Sam Altman, like Elon Musk, who are in the AI field, sphere, orbit, and who are also worried about where this is leading.
Well, I was going to say, after that, there's a little bit more fear in
now
me,
you're
honestly.
Scared. Yeah, I mean, he was pretty calm about it, but also, I think it's going to be the apocalypse. He didn't say that, but yeah, close to it. Yeah, crazy stuff. I'm curious to hear from you folks in the audience, anything or everything you have to say about AI, and whether you, in the conversation with Kooshiar, whether in fact you are amongst those who are concerned about where this is all going, and the different points he was bringing up, whether it's job losses or the environment or centralization of power or etc. So you can contact us at info@roqemedia.com or post on any of our platforms. Curious to hear about whether you fear AI. Pegah, we said we'd do something of a roundup before we end off today. And I know you've got a couple of items. Let's get right to it. The Roqe Roundup. First up, Angelina Jolie has penned a piece in Time magazine.
That's right.
That involves her speaking with Nargis Mohammadi, who is in jail in Iran or in the hospital. Hard for me to keep up. I feel worried for Nargis Mohammadi. Most of the time, our Nobel Peace Prize winner.
That's
Nobel
right.
Peace Prize, right?
Yes, that's
so
right.
what tell us about this piece?
So this she actually communicated with Nargis while she was still in prison, and the communication happened through family members. So Angelina Jolie sent some questions to family. Family tried to get those questions to Nargis, and then back throughout the same way. But I read the piece and I was really moved. Anytime I see pieces like this, I always think, it's going to be a dive into what's happened over the last year and a little bit of brief history, if you will, and then that's pretty much it. But something that really surprised me was that this piece was very different in the sense that it really was a Q&A with questions that Angelina Jolie had posed to Nargis Mohammadi. And, I thought, I know everything that's happened over the last year. I've thought about every angle of it. But to read some of the responses, to read some of the things that Nargis Mohammadi was mentioning, like the numerous times that, she was taken to prison in front of her children, how the home that she was in was stormed when her daughter was sick and they tore her daughter out of her arms so that they would drag her over to a prison. And, the emotion of that really caught me off guard. And it was really surprising because, again, we've been seeing things like this, hearing about it over the last year and a bit. That was the first thing I wanted to point out. And also, the end of the article, for anyone who hasn't read it, ends off on such a positive and strong note, with Nargis Mohammadi, staying true to her convictions and saying that she's just as determined, if not more, to continue this fight, was just incredible.
It's great. Every bit counts. A piece like this, I don't know how many people are reading Time magazine. Maybe the Angelina Jolie angle helps, but if it helps educate or inform people around the world, in the U.S., wherever they're reading this, about the situation in Iran, it's helpful. And I think it would have only happened, an interview like this happens, gets greenlit by the editors, the publisher, whatever, because Nargis Mohammadi is a Nobel Peace Prize winner, right?
Yes.
There's lots of people in jail in Iran. And so this goes back to that idea that we talked about a month ago or whenever the Nobel was handed out, of what does it really mean? Because we know it doesn't mean much to the regime other than they might punish her more for being a winner of this prize. This is where it's important. It becomes a vehicle for people to be in touch and elevate information, her story, etc. It's a shame that it takes a Nobel Peace Prize to do that, but in this case, I think it's very effectively demonstrating that an article in Time magazine about what's going on for a woman in Iran who's been an activist and the information in and around that of what it's like to live under this oppressive regime. That's great.
And actually, it's interesting that you say that because it's one of the things that Nargis Mohammadi actually addresses in this article. She says, upon hearing the news of the fact that she won the Nobel Peace Prize, she was actually really happy, not strictly because she won it, but also because the selection of someone like her would actually bring more authenticity and legitimacy to the protests, the movements, what it is that we're all fighting for. Exactly.
We hate that we need that, but
yes,
we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other item that you had mentioned that you want to talk about is something about Raisi giving a speech. I can't wait to hear what.
Yes, this is an interesting one for sure. So, for anyone who hasn't seen this very I say funny because I'm just blown away by some of the comments that were made during this speech. So Raisi gave a speech to the Basij earlier today.
So this is the President Raisi,
yes,
right?
President
Talking
of the Islamic Republic.
Talking to the Basij. Who's the Basij now? The militia, right? The plainclothes militia.
Yeah, so it's a volunteer militia and actually under the IRGC. So it's one of the 5, I think, categories under the IRGC. But also students that are, hoping one day to be part of this military apparatus. And so the one thing that he mentions in this speech is that he determined Palestine the winner of this conflict. And this is a direct quote. He literally said, I'm declaring Palestine the winner of this conflict.
Right. Spoiler alert.
On what basis?
Yeah.
God knows.
In case,
But, he came and said that this is following the news of the temporary ceasefire. And so he's making this declaration. But further to that,
thousands of potentially and actually innocent lives lost in Gaza, but Palestine is the winner. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's not even so much about what he's saying. It's just the fact that he views himself in this position to be able to make a declaration like this that's completely baseless.
Right.
And so further...
Did he say because Hamas is still alive? So Hamas is still a thing. Hamas is still a thing, so he says Palestine is one. I think that's the reasoning.
Maybe
they didn't eliminate Hamas yet.
And so in continuation to this speech, he actually went on to talk a little bit more about the mobilization of people who are concerned about the revolution and the Islamic values. And it almost felt like he was taking this opportunity to kind of fuel those same mandates or views that the Islamic regime has. And all of this was done while he was actually wearing a keffiyeh. Right. So this is new because this isn't something we've seen Raisi do at all, but in fact something that Khomeini and Khamenei have done previously. So that was kind of a move on his part, or I guess some sort of a show of strength.
Perhaps a shameless attempt to exploit global sympathies in as much as they exist for Palestinians by wearing the keffiyeh and saying, look, I'm on the team. We're the good guys.
That's right.
If you are pro-Palestinian.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the final point that I wanted to talk about in regards to this speech is that he talked about a movement of resistance within the region. Specifically, he pinpointed southern Lebanon. And he went on to say how all of this was actually inspired by Khomeini. And so all of this comes back to the Islamic Republic.
Of course.
And how the Islamic Revolution was in fact the first core of resistance within this region.
Right.
So very, very interesting speech from Raisi today.
Nothing really surprising.
No, not at all.
I mean, maybe preemptively declaring the winner of the conflict, but
yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Pega. Wonderful. So next Thursday, Kaveh Madani joined me in the studio for a feature interview. Plus, we're going to have our Roqe Roundtable, if it's not on Monday.
It's an if now.
Well, I don't know. I have to figure...
5 minutes ago, we were saying,
5 minutes ago. Well, an hour ago, maybe.
Sure.
But yeah, I just don't, I can never be sure. But I think...
Well, then maybe we'll see you Monday. Maybe we'll see
you
you
Monday. If not, it'll all be on Thursday. So we'll definitely come back next week. Just keep posted. Keep near your platform machine, whatever it is you're using. Thank you, Pega.
Thank you.
Thank you and your perfume. It's full time for Roqe for today. Our website, roqemedia.com, roqemedia.com. That's where you can find all things Roqe related, including our back episodes, our funnies, our videos, our support us button, and our entire Uprising series and the contemporary history of Iran. Roqemedia.com is where to find it all. Almost to 300 shows,
I know.
Yeah. But if you actually include the contemporary history of Iran, then it's like 350 or something. Anyway, thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Smart Pega, Super Parisa, Talented Anahita, Savvy Roham, Bearded Omid, Methodical Kaveh, hope you're doing well in Montreal. Thank you to all of you out there supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Find me on Instagram at Jian Gomeshi. Mizun Bashi.